Hi, I'm Bob, and welcome to Between the Sheets, where we look at Microsoft Excel and related technologies. When you write a long formula that repeats the same calculation several times, you can simplify it by assigning variable names using the let function, which is available in Excel's 365 editions for Windows and Mac. The let function isn't doing any calculation Excel didn't do before, it's just making long formulas more understandable and simpler to modify. Really, it's better to show you than describe it. So let's take a look and see how it works. The arguments work in pairs. Here's the syntax. You say equals let, then you can have one variable and value pair, you can have two, you can have as many as you want, and then the last argument is a calculation. So in the first pair, you create a variable name and then you assign a value. The expression, the calculation at the end, simply uses the variable names and values that you created. Now just be aware, the scope of the variables is limited just to the cell where you're writing the function. You can't declare a variable in one cell and use it in another. You could do that in Visual Basic and Python programming languages, but not in a regular Excel function. I'll start with a simple example. Now, you wouldn't use the function for this in real life, but I think this simple example illustrates it best. So in column A, we have different amounts of red apples, and in column B, we have amounts of green apples. Now for each combination, we want to add red and green and find total apples. Of course, we could use regular addition or the sum function, but here is how the let function would do it. I'm going to go over here to A9 in that gray box, and I'm going to put in equals let, and you can see I have the function available to me because it comes up in the syntax helper. And I'm going to declare the variable red apples, and the value for that is going to be in A4. So there's that first red apple, comma, now the next variable, green apples, comma, and the value for that is in B4. Okay, now I'm going to create the expression. So I'm going to say red apples, and notice when I start typing red, it already gives me the little helper there, so I could just hit the tab key, plus green, and also when I start typing green, it gives me that little syntax helper, so I could just hit the tab key, and that's it. Close the parenthesis and enter, and I can see it's 18, right? And you could just do that in your head. So now what I could do is I could go into that formula, and in the cell or in the formula bar, I could say, okay, instead of A4, let's make that A5, and then instead of B4, I'm going to make that B5 and enter that. And now you see we have 15. So you could keep doing this over and over again and just use different inputs of different combinations there to get that total amount. Now that we see how it works, let's use it in a more realistic situation. So I'm going to go down to this next tab here, the quarterly tab. And here's the idea. We have all these people wholesaling coffee beans, and column B shows us how much they sold in the current year. For the first 6 months of next year, we want to increase the sales, and the target increase depends on how much they already sold. And I'm going to keep this on the screen so you can see what I'm doing. If they sold under 80K, we figure there's no likely increase, and we hope they simply sell half of the previous year. If they sold between 80 and 100K, the following 6 months should be 5% higher than half the previous year. If they sold between 100 and 150K, the following 6 months should be 10% higher than half the previous year. And if they sold more than 150K, the following 6 months should be 20% higher than half the previous year. And down column C, we'll do it first using the ifs function. Before we even use the let function, just the plain old ifs function. Now, I covered the ifs function in a previous episode, but here's a quick review. So the syntax is equals ifs, and also we have conditions and values in pairs. So we have one condition, if that value is true, that's the next argument. And then you could have another pair, second condition, and second value if that's true. Have as many of these pairs as you want. When you're done with that, you put in the keyword true. Don't ask why, you just have to do it. And then finally, if none of these conditions evaluate to true, you have a default value, or call it a value if false. So I'm going to say equals ifs. Open up the parenthesis, and there's that B5. And if B5 is less than 80,000, so there's that first condition. If that's true, then we're going to take that B5 divided by 2, and we're not multiplying by anything, we're just leaving that alone, so that's going to be that value of true, comma. Now let's do the next one. So we're going to say, again, B5, if that is less than 100,000, comma. So if that's true, we're going to take that B5 divided by 2, and now we're going to multiply that by 1.05. So we have a 5% increase, comma. Now we'll do the next one. So again, we're going to say, is B5 less than 150,000? And if that's true, then we're going to take that B5 divided by 2, and we're going to multiply that by 1.1. So we have a 10% increase. Now we're going to put in the keyword true, because the last one, if none of those evaluate to true, then we're going to say, finally, B5 divided by 2 times 1.2. So we have a 20% increase. And that's it. Close the parenthesis. We can see where that is. And let's go and double click the autofill dot. And we have all that in. Okay, so you notice it works. It looks great, but it's kind of messy, because let's double click there. You see that B5 divided by 2, we're using that 4 times. I'm doing it here and here and here and here. So let's clean it up with the let function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole function, because I don't really want to type that in again. I'm just going to copy that to the clipboard, and I'm going to go to column D. And this way we could compare column C and column D, and you'll see the numbers are going to be exactly the same. We're just doing it a slightly different way. So now I'm going to go in there and I'm going to paste, but I'm going to clear off a little bit of space after that equal sign, just so I have some room to type and you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to have that entire ifs function nested inside the let function. So I'm going to say equals let, open the parenthesis. So I'm going to create a variable name. I'm going to call it half sales, comma, the value, one last time we have to type this, is going to be B5 divided by 2. Now we can remove some of that space. So now what I could do is everywhere we've got that B5 divided by 2 in the parenthesis, I can replace that with the variable half sales. And I just do that 3 times. Notice I don't even have to type the whole thing in, because it comes up in the syntax helper. I could just tab through it. There, one last time. And now I have to remember to have one more closing parenthesis, right? Because we have the let function opening and the ifs function opening. Let's get rid of that one. So we have the let function opening there. We have the ifs function opening there. We have them both closing there at the end. Let's enter that. You see it's the same number. Let's go and autofill down to the bottom. And you see that the numbers are all the same. So what's the point of using this? Well, what I could do now is I could go in here and say, instead of B5 divided by 2, I could be maybe a little more generous, a little less generous. Instead of divided by 2, maybe I'm going to divide by 3. And autofill that. And now you see the numbers have changed. Or instead of dividing that by 3, maybe I'll divide that by like 1.75. So you see, I have to do that only once. I don't have to do that 4 times. And I can autofill that in. So that way, I don't have to worry about, oh, gee, I missed one of those 4 and I'm going to get some, bad, incorrect results. I only have to worry about just doing it once. You see, the let function is really meant to be used with others nested inside it. For Excel Power users, this can make life a lot easier. So until next time, my name is Bob, and this has been Between the Sheets.